Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. 12 years ago, NASA's James Hansen and the New York Times announced that it's game over for the climate. And Hansen's little buddy, Michael Mann, has announced once again that it is game over for the climate. So let's take another look at how the press and academics work together to create a completely fictional climate story.
Extreme weather events like the heat wave that we're currently experiencing in the Midwest and the East Coast are becoming more frequent. They're becoming severe. They're supercharged by human-caused global warming.
That was a provocative assertion. Let's take a look and see if there's any truth to what he just said. Average daily maximum temperatures in June so far have been just about average since 1895, and down about 5 degrees since the hottest June in 1933. The percentage of the United States to have reached 90 degrees Fahrenheit sometime during June is slightly below average. The percentage of days above 90 degrees Fahrenheit during June was just about average since 1895 and way down from 1933. The percentage of temperature readings above 95 degrees Fahrenheit is also just about average since 1895. During June 1933, 29% of U.S. temperature readings were over 95 degrees Fahrenheit. This year it's only about 10%. There are 1,218 stations in the United States Historical Climatology Network. This graph shows how many set their June record maximum temperature versus year since 1895. Only 2 of the 1,218 stations set their June record maximum this year, as opposed to 1936, when a very large percentage of them did. So let's listen to what MSNBC said once again.
Extreme weather events like the heat wave that we're currently experiencing in the Midwest and the East Coast are becoming more frequent. They're becoming severe. They're supercharged by human-caused global warming.
There's no truth to what he just said. In fact, the evidence shows the exact opposite. Now let's watch the rest of the video where he's talking to Michael Mann. At the end of this clip, I'll be talking more about what they just said.
9 in 10 Americans have experienced at least one extreme weather event in the past 5 years, according to an Associated Press poll. And amid all these troubling reports, most Americans do want the government to step up. A recent CBS poll shows an overwhelming majority, 70%, favor federal climate policies. Now, for his part, President Biden has been credited with doing more to confront the climate crisis than any prior president. Under his administration, several critical climate initiatives have been passed, including the historic Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which promotes the transition to clean energy and invests in making communities more resilient to climate impact. His plan includes new automobile emissions standards, which experts call the most ambitious plan ever to cut planet-warming pollution that comes from passenger vehicles. In contrast, the Republican nominee for president, Donald Trump, has repeatedly dismissed climate change as a hoax, and he's famously labeled it a Chinese plot. Not sure what part of it is the plot. Trump's close ties with the fossil fuel industry have always been apparent, but with Project 2025, the conservative playbook for the next Republican presidency, a Trump presidency would guarantee a wholesale attack on federal climate and environmental policies. The manifesto calls for the complete dismantling of federal climate initiatives, dismissing them as a, quote, woke agenda, end quote. Among other things, it proposes restricting the Environmental Protection Agency's authority to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Even more alarming, the plan calls for reducing transparency and public participation in environmental decision-making. As my next guest, Michael Mann, warns, the climate cannot survive another Donald Trump term, writing, quote, "We are truly at a fragile moment. Global climate action lies on a knife edge, hinging upon American leadership that is threatened by a prospective Trump second term and a radicalized GOP intent on undermining climate progress both here and abroad." It's not an overstatement to say that we face an American election unlike any other. It will determine not only the course of the American experiment, but the path that civilization collectively follows. On the left is democracy and environmental stewardship. On the right is fascism and planetary devastation. Choose wisely. With more on this, I'm joined by Michael Mann, a presidential distinguished professor at the University of Pennsylvania and director of the Penn Center for Science, Sustainability, and the Media. He's the author of numerous books, including Our Fragile Moment, How Lessons from Earth's Past Can Help Us Survive the Climate Crisis. Professor Mann, it is good to see you again. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Ali. Always good to be with you.
I mean, on one hand, I would like to rate President Biden's efforts in addressing climate change. But on the other hand, there's also this issue in which, in a binary choice in November, you have one candidate saying, we're going to undo all this. We're going to reverse all of this. So I don't know. Give me some context as to how we're supposed to think about Biden v. Trump re-climate.
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right. It's night and day. You have, on the one hand, a president who has helped shepherd the most aggressive climate legislation in U.S. history, the Inflation Reduction Act. The provisions of that bill, if implemented, will lower our carbon emissions by about 40%. It's not enough. We have to do more, but it's an important start. And so you have that on the one hand, and on the other hand, as you already illuminated your listeners, a president who will basically be a rubber stamp for polluters and right-wing interests who are trying to dismantle not just U.S. climate policy, but global climate policy. So it really is about the future of the planet. And, Biden hasn't been perfect here, but we have to recognize that at every turn, he's been blocked by a conservative Supreme Court. He has been blocked by Republicans in Congress who've done everything they can to throw a monkey wrench into the works when it comes to implementing the policies the climate policies of this administration. And so, the Biden administration really has done pretty much everything it can in the current political environment. And if we want to see more aggressive climate action, we need to elect to Congress. We need to nominate Supreme Court justices. We need to take back our government and replace rubber stamps for polluters with climate champions.
There are a few things going on. There is an effort before the Supreme Court to dismantle what's the so-called administrative state. The idea that experts at organizations like the agencies like the EPA will not be able to have authority to implement standards and things like that. Then there's Project 2025, and then there's Donald Trump talking to a bunch of oil executives and CEOs the other day, basically trading off deregulation for donor dollars in the campaign. They're all of a piece, but the Project 2025 stuff really worries me because it's actually stated policy. They are going to treat climate, the things that you do, as woke nonsense.
Yeah, that's right. And look, they didn't accomplish everything they had hoped to in Trump's first term. And so and I'm talking about polluters, I'm talking about the Koch brothers and other plutocrats, the fossil fuel industry. They have this wish list of things that they were unable to accomplish in only one Trump presidency that they are going to make sure to accomplish in a prospective second Trump presidency. And that's why I've said that, a second Trump presidency would be more or less game over for climate action. It would be game over for domestic climate policy. And as goes the U.S., goes the rest of the world when it comes to action on climate.
There's something in Project 2025 that aims to reduce transparency and public participation in environmental decision-making. Why is public participation in environmental decision-making important?
Yeah, because, this is a government for the people, of the people, for the people, by the people. The people is part of every is a component of each of those, each of the governmental, responsibilities. And, they don't want to hear from the people. They want to favor polluters over people, right? They don't want the interests of the people, which is a cleaner planet, a survivable future for their children and grandchildren. That's not what they care about. These plutocrats are convinced that they can build fortresses, that they'll be just fine, and all they're interested in is maximizing their short-term profits at the expense, literally, of the planet that we leave behind for our children and grandchildren.
Michael, good to see you as always. Thank you for joining us. Michael Mann is a presidential distinguished professor at the University of Pennsylvania. He's the author of Our Fragile Moment, How Lessons from Earth's Past Can Help Us Survive the Climate Crisis.
That was a fascinating story. Only problem is, nothing they said has any basis in reality. Under Biden, the growth of atmospheric carbon dioxide last year was an all-time record. And it makes no difference whatsoever which party is in control of the White House. The blue here is Biden, the red was Trump, the blue before that was Obama-Biden, before that it was Bush, before that it was Clinton, before that it was Reagan and Bush, before that it was Jimmy Carter. Michael Mann's claim that it's critical which party is in the White House has no basis in evidence. Which party is in control of the White House has zero impact on the rate of atmospheric CO2 growth. And Michael Mann's claim of American leadership is equally as absurd. North America, Europe, Africa, South America, and Australia could all drop off the face of the earth, and the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere would continue to grow. The reason is because Asia controls the world's CO2 emissions. China obviously has no interest in this climate nonsense other than the fact that it helps them sell solar panels and windmills. It's breathtaking how dishonest the press and climate academics are. Hopefully, during the next Donald Trump term, it will be game over for this scam. Toto's been pulling back the curtain on this nonsense for 16 years. You can visit him and his family on the web at realclimatescience.com.